So let's get into our presentations. So I'd like to ask Claire to start out. And if I have this right, she's going to talk about the Magis family faith formation and children's liturgy at home, a resource through the Pastoral Center, and maybe some other things. Go ahead, Claire.
Okay, thank you, Vince. Speaking of accents, I used to have a really strong Chicago accent that came out when I was on the phone with my mom. My husband afterwards would be like, "You sound ridiculous on the phone with your mom." Like, not at all like myself. But I've been on the West Coast since the age of 18, so that kind of evens out the accent a bit. But anyway, it's great to meet you all this morning. And Crystal, you forgot something really important, and that is that you're going to be one of our RCIC volunteers for this year. So we're really excited to have that program have a volunteers. Okay, well, anyway, I'm here today to share a little bit about what we're doing to try to support the home life of our youngest parishioners. Before the pandemic and kind of just at the edges of the pandemic, we were doing a children's message from Father John that he had recorded and then would post to YouTube. And that actually came about because a couple parishioners who had a first grader and a kindergartner emailed him and said, you know, my kindergartner, my first grader, they're watching, we try to watch Mass, but they have about, 8 minutes in them, and then they're kind of ready to move on to other things. So is there something that we can offer for 8 minutes? And I think, Father John kind of said, well, sure, I can tell a story. And that was kind of what he did. But, there are a lot of resources out there, starting kind of with the pandemic, that have been thoughtfully made for families with kids. And one of them comes out of a small group in Oakland called the Pastoral Center. And I wanted to share it with you today. It is it's kind of like going to a prayer service that's led by your own family. And it follows the Mass. So it's a little bit like being at Mass, all the same readings, all the same prayers, all the same parts without the Eucharist. And then the things that they've added have really been added with children in mind. So they've added some video music as an opening prayer. They've added some great, engaging content right after the homily or right after the gospel that can kind of serve as the homily. They've added some conversational questions that can be asked and discussed as a family. So it's really it's a very Catholic experience, which is nice. It really kind of continues your child's faith formation through the perspective of a Catholic family liturgy. But it's really built with children that's in mind. So I wanted to take a minute just to demo that for you and show you what that looks like. And I'm just going to share my screen. So this is the website here, and as Vince mentioned, it is posted, and you'll also see it in the faith formation area of our weekly bulletin as well. But so they've been doing these services since March. So there's a weekly service. Like I said, it follows the lectionary, and they have their November one kind of coming up soon. They usually post each service, they try to do 2 to 3 days before the actual service itself. So let's go ahead and take a look at today's for October 25th, just to get a look at it. And so they have a little section here called preparation, what you can do to get ready, to set the environment for your family to experience this worship service together. They have a just before you begin, setting aside your phone or other devices that may interrupt you, taking some time for quiet. They have a little opening song here. This is their teaser, a 2-minute video that gives you a taste of the gospel reading for today. So that's kind of a little great. Then they have their opening song. They'll know we're Christians by our love. And it has a new little twist on it. Anyone can be the leader. You can also divide this out with your different kids. Oh, you're going to lead the greeting. You know, you're going to lead this other piece here at the end. So it's all divided up between a leader and everyone, right? And so because you're doing this at home in the context of your family, anyone can be the leader. Your youngest child can be the leader. They can rotate. You can pick. Then they have their, you know, just like we would have at Mass, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy. They have the opening prayer. They have the liturgy of the word that they have just chosen one reading because it is children's liturgy. There's not the first reading and the second reading and the psalm and all of that. It's more focused so that children's attention span can really be captured. So they'll have an Alleluia, they'll have a gospel, and this follows the children's Bible. So it'll be a simpler translation that's accessible for kids. And they have that divided up. Then they have a little video reflection. This week's is called Kids and the Greatest Commandment, which is great. Definitely going to spark some great conversation in the family. And they have another one here. Sometimes they, like I said, they have reflections that your family can look at together, conversation questions. I liked this one. Do you know that you have near and far neighbors? You do. You know some of your neighbors because they live near, but you also have neighbors that live across town in another part of the country or halfway around the world. And so it just kind of discusses that. I love those little points, little reflections. And some of them, you know, have little action items here. And then you have your prayers of the faithful, you know, just like we would. Allowing time for anyone to speak prayers aloud at the end of that in the family. And then kind of the closing pieces is just a chance to pray the Lord's Prayer together, the sign of peace, sharing some hugs, which of course we can do with everyone in our quarantine bubble. And then just a litany for spiritual communion. I think Theresa will talk a little bit more about communion at home. But this is a practice that they have included in here of, you know, expressing the desire to have communion. So expressing that desire, praying with that absence. And it's a great way to teach your children about the Eucharist in the time that we are all kind of fasting from it. So that's a nice connection to make, especially if you have little kids that recently had their first communion and aren't able to keep going back. And then it's just the blessing and dismissal. And again, they've got a little closing song in here. Love is What We Need, this one by Stephen Grassimo, who's a great, they have different songs each week, different musical pieces. And kids, you know, you're encouraged to have if you have little kids, like I have a 4-year-old, if he wanted to get up and dance and sing during that, great, right? So that's just one piece. And like I said, they offer that each week. So, and each week it's different. Sorry about, I don't know if I'm going over my time here, then just give me when it's time to kill it. And then the last thing I just wanted to show is, so because we weren't offering many classes this year, we've mostly kind of had to focus our classes down to our sacramental classes. So confirmation for 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, and then first communion preparation for 1st and 2nd graders. We've kind of had to narrow that down. So a lot of ages and stages that we would normally have formation for, we had to drop for this year. So pre-K, kindergarten, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. So what we did was we kind of convened a group of parents who wanted to create some formation pieces that could be done by families at home. And so what they've created is sort of like a menu of options that you can look through each week, and it's in the bulletin. It's also on our website, and you can kind of say, oh, that's a cool thing. I'll try that with my child this week or this month. And what it is it's offered every month. So I'll show you the October one. So what they did was they decided they want to offer some examine prayers for different ages. So there's an examine for older children here and an examine for younger children, like that you could even do with a first grader or a kindergartner, which is really neat. There's also just some, this is have a chat, right? Like anywhere, in the car, on a walk, you know, just conversation starters, right? They did something on the readings because the readings for October were so rich. So they just looked at some different verses each week and just came up with some reflection questions there. They also had this geocaching activity that they thought would be a great connection for this month. And just to make people feel more connected to St. Joseph, you know, just paint a rock and hide it around the St. Joseph property or in your neighborhood. They came up with a couple other great things, little service ideas, some book recommendations. They loved this bingo, you know, autumnal bingo, where you go outside and you look for things and you try to do either, you know how bingo works, where it's, you know, a row or diagonal or whatever. And so, you know, you kind of do that. And then they also just recommended just some songs. This particular version of the Magis was the first one we've ever done. So the November one is currently in its final stages of editing, but just briefly, some unique features for November coming up is just some ideas to celebrate the Day of the Dead and All Saints Day, and some of our traditions at the parish that families are invited to go into. The committee was also really excited about the Saint scavenger hunt inside the church, because we have all those beautiful windows. So taking your child into the church and finding the different windows that correspond to the different saints. And then one of the other things is they were really excited about the opportunity to pray together a litany of saints. And so they put a little script for how to do that in the Magis. So that's coming out. So I guess with that, I'll stop my screen share and just say that I'm happy to share these things and other ideas too with you, as we have time maybe later for questions and we can follow up. So thank you.
Thank you, Claire. That was just a great presentation. You know, one thing I did want to say that maybe you're not all aware of is the church is open every day. And I'm going to probably get the hours wrong. I want to say it's 1 to 3 during the week, or 12 to 3 during the week, 12 to 3 during the week, and then 12 to 4 on Saturday and Sunday. And so what Claire was talking about, doing the kind of the scavenger hunt inside the church, well, it wasn't a scavenger hunt, it was finding the saints. The church is open for that and you can come. Well, thanks again, Claire. And now we'll go to Theresa. And she's got a number of things she's going to talk about. First of all, Eucharist at home. Why? I don't know if this is the order she's going to go in. Ways to celebrate Eucharist during Thanksgiving, and a resource guide for Christmas and Advent. Is that right, Theresa?
Yep, pretty much. I also had a really quick question for Claire, because I was looking through our bulletin and I'm not seeing the October Magis. Is it typically like earlier in the month?
Yeah, so we ran it the first 3 weeks of October, and then we'll start the November next week. But they're all archived online.
And then in general, I mean, we're looking forward to Advent in about a month now. So there's a couple of things, and again, I didn't really put this together as a thing yet, but you know, I got a little time to do that. But the Catholic Church has at-home prayers and blessings. Like, you don't have to be a priest to bless things. So there are at-home blessings to bless an Advent wreath, let's say. So if you have, you know, honestly, I'm really simple. I just go out and buy my own wreath. I don't make it. I know that we've had activities like that at the parish, but I just buy a wreath and I put my 4 candles in the middle. But there's a prayer of blessing that you can bless it on your own and it kind of just centers yourself, it centers your family. There's also a blessing for Christmas trees. And there are guides that, you know, have a little weekly, I'm looking into these. There are little weekly guides of prayer for like every Sunday or at least once a week, that you would be able to like light one of the candles, pray with your family, have a little reading. Yeah. There's also devotionals that are a little bit more like daily, if somebody's more into something that would be more of a daily devotional. And then we have a parishioner who is putting together an Advent guide, basically Advent with Oscar Romero, but hopefully she'll have that done sometime in November here, that we can also post that. And I'm trying to find an Advent examine, or maybe I'll have to create it myself, but some kind of, again, with the different themes of the week, but being able to examine your own life. That being said, this is not necessarily about Christmas specifically, but it is a good guide, and I recommend it to everybody, and I buy copies of it constantly to give out to people. For your own personal prayer practice, if you're not in the habit of doing a daily examine, there is this book, and I believe it's also an app, called Reimagining the Exam by Mark Tribideau. But I highly recommend this because it's a, let's see here, there's 33 different ways of doing the examine in this book, but also on the app, it, you know, takes you through basically these types of examines. So like every day or even once a week, you can get in the habit of examining, you know, the graces, the blessings. Some people add this like with a prayer journal, like in the evening, they'll go through this and journal. It's a way of kind of discovering where God is working in your life, and you begin to notice it then throughout your daily routine if you get in the habit of doing it. That's really all I had at this time. I guess I'll hand it over to open discussion and conversation, or back to Vince to moderate.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment in addition, and we'll post this on the Council Forum website. The Ignatian Spirituality Center has an Advent evening of prayer, just one evening, and they'll be doing it again this year. It'll be different in a sense that it'll be virtual, but that's always been a wonderful resource for our community, as well as, you know, the larger community that they serve. So I think that would be a good thing to post as well. I just had a few things that I wanted to bring to your attention that are resources that we'll also post on the website. And in fact, they're already there. And these are resources we got from Jennifer Tillman Havens, who's a parishioner. And these came from a program which she presented with Jennifer Kelly for the ISC called Renewing Your Spirit of Parenting. And one is a family examine. And then it also includes some visuals to use with that family examine, and also an example of a family mission statement. I thought those might be helpful to you, and they'll be posted on the website. Yeah, so now we really like